Our next unit, that is nuclear physics. We have to study in this unit varieties of the factors which is correlated of the nuclear physics. Let's talk about them. Which are the structure of an atom, what the contents we have to study into the nuclear physics. This is Thompson model, Rutherford model and Bohr model of the atom. There are three types of the models of the structure of atom which are observed. First one, a Thompson model. The Thompson model. See, Thomson proposed that the atom which is composed of electrons surrounded by a soup of positive charges to balance the electrons negative charge. Means ki Thomsons who proposed that positive negative who are give some molecules and control their activities. This is here we are taking some example purpose watermelon. This is the red color which is indicated as the positive charge and the black color the seed which is absorbed by the negative electron factor and which is the caused by this factor which is equilibrium to making down of some factors. Here is according to we are talking about the atomic model. The positive and negative charged particles always gives the stable equilibriums. Okay, next one. Rutherford model. Rutherford confirmed that the atom had a concentrated center of positive charge and relative large mass. Means what is the proposed of the Rutherford model? Confirmed the atom which had concentrated center of the positive charge and relatively large masses, which gives to center for the positive charge and relatively for the large masses. Here this is the radioactive source which is the gold foil which is the detector. This is the beam. These are the observations which is interpretations. These are observed by this plate which is a pass by this radioactive source from to this pass by particles by the gold foil on it and pass it down from to gold foil. Some of the particles which are going to be passed and some of the particles which are reflected by the gold foil. This is the model who represent or the proposed by the Rutherford model. Next one, the main features. What are the main features? In an atom, the entire mass and the positive charge is concentrated in a very small region at the center known as the nucleus. Means ki in an atom, the entire mass and the positive charge which is concentrated by in a nucleus factor means ki into the small regions center. This is known as the nucleus. The positive charge of the nucleus which is due to by the proton means the nucleus in its particles which are positive manner which is called as the proton. The mass of the nucleus is due to the proton and the neutron. The nucleus mass which is produced due to by the proton and the neutron. Nucleus which is surrounded by the negatively charged electron. The nucleus which are surrounded by the negative particles means ki electrons which are moving out of the nucleus which is always in a movable factor and their charge which is observed into the negative manner which are called as the electron and into the center positive which is the proton factor means ki these are the positive charge factor. Failure if the model failed to explain the stability of an atom means ki the model explain for the stability of an atom. If electron which are not moving boundary around the nucleus, the stability which are proper means ki the moving factor and the controlling the factors means ki it is going to be satisfied model which is not properly done if the electron which are not moving around to the nucleus. Next one, the Bohr model of the atom. According to the Bohr, first one, Bohr proposed the first electron in atoms orbit the nucleus means electrons in atom which is orbit means ki layer of the nucleus. Obviously in the nucleus proton and the neutron which are there, but the neutron which haven't any charge, but the proton have the positive charge. Around the orbit only the electron which is a moving boundary to that layer and it's have a negative charge. Who is proposed the Bohr model, means ki proposed by the scientist of the Bohr. Second, the electrons can only orbit stable without radiating in certain orbits, which are electrons which can only which pass by the orbit, the layer by the layer, which is transmit by the only and only electrons, not other the particles. Electrons can only gain and lose energy by jumping from one allowed orbit to the another and absorbing or emitting electromagnetic radiation with a frequency determined by the energy difference of the levels. Means ki electrons which are only gain and loss by jumping from one allowed orbit to the another and absorbing or emitting electromagnetic radiations with a frequency which are determined by the energetic difference between the levels. Means ki electrons allowed only jump by one orbit to the another orbit, absorbing, emitting everything, which is only loss or gain energy by the electrons. As long as electrons remain in a particular path, it does not lose or gain the energy. Means as long as electron remain in a particular path, means this is the 1, 2, 3 and 4, these are the layer. This is N shell, this is M, L, K, this is the positively charged proton, and these are the layer named K, L, M, N. These are the orbit level which are appear, right? So here the electrons always moving in this boundary, jumping around here in a boundary. This is the pathway which is not move to here to here. It is always a passing by this in a this is the orbit factor. This is, it does not lose or gain the energy. The energy of the electrons in a particular shell remains by the constant. Now the success. Bohr's atomic model explains the stability of an atom. Means ki how to be success, means ki the Bohr's atomic model which will be explained the stability of an atom, which gives to the stability of the atom. Bohr's atomic model explains successfully the atomic spectrum of the hydrogen atom. Means ki what is explained successfully atomic spectrum of the hydrogen atom. Detection of the radioactivity and the monitoring. Means ki how to be detections of the radioactivity and the monitoring, which is evaluate the radiation hazard. Periodic readings need to be made in a field around a source or source of the radiation, which will be evaluate radiations which are hazard. Periodic readings which are need to made in this field around a source or the source of the radiation. Each monitoring system uses a detecting elements and device that transcribe the detections radiation into unit of the measurement. Means ki each monitoring system which are uses for detecting elements and a device that transcribe the detected radiation into the unit for the measurement. Means ki identification. Example, Geiger, Muller counter, the ionizing chambers, the scintillations counter and proportional counters. These all are the example for the radioactivity and their monitoring factor. This is Geiger-Muller counter. We will be discussed by the next, which is the one of the constant factor, and that sums are there. But the ionizing chamber, how to be, what the type of the elements and their level, means ki how to be emitted or what the level, what the type of the energy, which depends by depends on to the nucleus energy, their orbital level of the electrons, everything dependent on it into the periodic cycle, means ki into the factor. gives scintillations counter, means the elements which are used and scintillations from to their waste, which is called as the scintillations count, and what is the emitted of the energy from to that element, which is called as the scintillation, right? And the proportional counter. Next one, what is called as the Geiger Muller counter, which is construction. It consists of a hollow metal case enclosed in a thin glass tube. The hollow metal case acts as the cathode. The fine tungsten wire, which is stretched along the axis of the tube and is insulated by ebonite plugs. This fine tungsten wire acts as the anode. Means ki it consists of a hollow metal case which enclosed in a thin glass tube, and with this hollow metal case which act by a cathode. The fine tungsten wire which is stretched along to the axis of the tube, means ki with the stretch along by the axis of the tube, and which is insulated by the ebonite plug. This fine tungsten wire act by the anode. The tube which is evacuated and then particularly filled with the mixture of the 90% argon at 10 cm pressure and 10% ethyl alcohol vapors at the 1 cm pressure. The hollow tubes which is made by these factors with the 90% argon at the 10 cm pressure and 10% ethyl alcohol vapors at the 1 cm pressure. Next one, the fine tungsten wire which is concentrated to a positive terminal of a high tension battery through a resistant R, and the negative terminal which is concentrated to the metal tube, which means ki how to be attach the wire loop to the wire to the factors and start over that practicals or experiment. The direct current voltage which is kept slightly less than that which will cause a discharge between the electrode, means ki the direct current voltage which is kept slightly less than that which will causes a discharge which is between the electrodes. What are the electrons which is transmissions way, how to be transferred from to that 90% argons and the 10 cm wire, everything which is connected and started by this direct current. At one end of the tube, a thin window of the mica which is arranged to allow the entry of radiations into the tube, which is gives the small tube to entry by the radiated factors. Principle of the Geiger-Muller count: a single electron entering the chamber between the electrodes, which is initiates ionizing, causing the flow of electric current, which is then transformed into the audible click. Means ki a single electron entering by the chamber between the electrode, which is initiates the ionizations which are caused the flow of the electric current, and which is then transferred into the audible click, which is transferred by into. This is the one of the experiments which is observed by this Geiger-Muller count. This is the atom or the molecules filled with the gas. This is media. Control center of the electrodes which is charged by the positive charge factor. This is the here which are appear by this factor, means ki electrodes completing current, Geiger counter, translator, current reading factor, which all are factors which are appear by this rod, and this is these are the positive negative detectors. This is the ionizing of the filled gas take place along the track of the radiation, which are the negatively charged electrodes factors which are there, and the audible sounds which are appear by this gas and the conditions. Okay, this is the Geiger-Muller counter over principle. Next one, ionization chamber. What is the ionization chambers? It is based on the principle that radiations which is causes ionizations in the gas, means ki which are based on the principle that radiations who are causes ionization in the gas. The two electrodes at the opposite potential which are placed in a sealed gas filled tube means ki which are potential placed in a sealed gas filled by the tube, and passage of radiation through the chamber produced ions that are attracted to the opposite sides of the charged electrodes. Means this is the passage of the radiation through to the chamber and produced ions. What are the ions? Positive and the negative. Obviously these are the opposite direction, opposite way, and who are attracted by the opposite charge of the electrodes. The current produced in the operator, which is read out of the meter, and the operator would be read by this meter. The proportional counting chamber, it produces a pulses whose strength is proportional to the energy of the entering and ionizing radiations, which is produced by the pulses, and which strength is proportional to the entry of the entering ionizing radiations. Means ki which are pulses, it is represented by the pulse, and that strength which is proportional to the energy of the entering ionizing radiations. This apparatus which is useful in measuring the alpha radiation, which are the apparatus which are useful for measuring by the alpha radiation. These are the type of the radiation, alpha, beta, gamma, but this is appear or measured by the alpha radiation. It can also distinguish alpha from beta and gamma radiation because of the energy differences of these three kind of the radiation. Three different type of the kind of the radiations, out of them alpha, beta and gamma, the distinguish means ki difference between the energetic factor by these factors, counter, proportional to counter chamber. Then after scintillations counter, what are the scintillations counter? This contains crystals that liberate light when exposed to the radiation, means ki which count by the crystals which liberate by the light when exposed to the radiations, which are exposed by the radiations. The flashes of the light which are converted into electrical impulses through the use of the photomultiplier tube, which is impulses by the use of the photomultiplier tube. Scintillations counters are useful for rapid counting and for discriminating between different type of the radiation. Means ki the scintillations means ki emitted by the radioactive labeled elements, counters which are useful for rapid counting and for discriminate between different type of the radiation. Discriminate means ki to identify or differentiate. Some counters are reduced to pocket size that can be conveniently carried by the person. Means ki some of the counters which are reduced by the pocket size. This is the give some a related example, and which conveniently carried by the person. Now, what is the clinical uses of the radioisotopes or isotopes and radio elements? Because we are studying the biophysics, so the elements which is the physics level elements which are how to be appear useful in a medical level. So first, radioisotopes are the unstable form of an element that emit radiation to transform into a more stable form. Means ki unstable form of an element that emit means ki expressed emits by the radiations to transform into a more stable form. Radioisotopes may be applied locally for treatment of superficial conditions or may be administered orally. Means ki radioisotopes may be applied by the locally for treatment of the superficial conditions or may be administered by the orally. The radioisotope ionizing radiations is directed to the affected portions of the body without affecting surrounding normal tissues. Means ki which are radioisotopes ion radiations which is directed to the affected portions body, means ki wherever affected, which is affected body without affecting surrounding normal tissues. Here radioisotopes and applications in the medicines. What are the radioisotopes and what are the applicable manner into the medicine. So let us talk about the radioisotope. This is the sodium 24, which is used for the study to blood circulations, which is related to the some medications factor for study for the blood circulations, blood clots, circulations disorders. Iodine 131, locations and detection of the brain tumor and thyroid gland disorders. Phosphorus 30, diagnosis of the breast tumors, and cobalt 16, used for controlling the cancerous growth of the cell. Iron 59, used to study of the iron metabolism in a spleen. Simple. Then chromium 51, used in a diagnosis of the gastrointestinal bleeding. Potassium 42, used for potassium distributions in bodily fluids and to locate brain tumors. Radium 223, used to treat prostate cancer that have spread to the bones. Selenium 75, used to study the production of the digestive enzymes. Copper 64, the used to PET imaging studies for tumor and also cancer therapy. Next one, radioisotopes and applications. Next one, gallium 67, indium 111, which is our utilized factor. Applications, what this is the radioisotope, selenium 201, rhenium 186. These all are radiotypes, and what are their application in our body? These are applicable manner by this medicine. Radiation's protection limits. What are the radiation protection limit? Which is the NRC and EPA have the established by the 3 layers of the radiation protection limits to protect the public against potential health risk and from nuclear power plant spill or leak or the radioactive liquid, which are protective limits. Means ki in a simple manner I am talking about that this type of the 2 NRC and EPA which established for human welfareness, means ki it is gives to protections and to the radioactive labeled materialistic, which is hazardous to ourselves, which is protect to the human beings by the radioactive factor. How to be done with radio, because it's a carcinogenic, so how to be work with them, so it gives some knowledge and the guidelines about the radioactive labels materials and how to be deal with them. So these 2 type of the factors established for the radiation protection factors. Next one, layer 1, 3 marks per year, ALA objective, appendix 1 to 10, CFR part 15. This is the rule and the law. These are the rules and the law. Like NRC requires that nuclear plant operators must keep off-site radiation doses from the gas and liquid release as low as responsible for achievable. Means if you are not following these rules, you are responsible for your own causes. For liquid release such as diluted tritium, the ALRA annual off-site dose objective is thirds MREM to the whole body and 10 mods to an other organ of someone living close to the plant boundary. This is for the liquid area. This is for the general uses for the gas, liquid and the low reasonably achievable activity. This ALRA objective is 3% of the annual public radiation dose limit of the 100 mods and a small fractions of the natural background radiation dose. If a nuclear power plant exceed half of this radiation doses level in a calendar quarter, the plant operators must be investigate the causes, which is initiated by appropriate corrective actions and report the actions to the NRC with the 30 days from the end of the quarter. We have to exceed of these factors level calendar quarter by the quarter, means ki 1/4 quarter within a 30 days from end of the quarter, means ki the quarter means ki the 4th portion of the quarter which are observed. The layer 2, the EPA radiation doses limit related to the nuclear power at 25 mods to the whole body, means ki how much amount of the 25 modes which is appear by the whole body. Whatever you are done with the identification purpose or whatever, only 25 modes you have to use by whole body. 75 modes for the thyroid and 25 modes for the other organ of an individual member of the public. NRC regulations incorporated by the EPA standards in 1981, and all nuclear power plant must now meet these requirements, which are obviously we have to using before these sections we have to construct a power plants not meet for the requirements. These standards apply to nuclear power plants and facilities that mill and manufacture nuclear fuel. The NRC's objectives are lower than these EPA standards, means ki which are the NRC's ALARA objectives which have the lower which than to the EPA standards. The third layer, the NRC's final layer of the protections of the public health and safety limits radiation doses to 100 mods per year for individual members of the public. This limit applies to the every civilian facility that uses by the radioactive materials, means NRC's final year protections for the public health which have gives to a safety limits doses to the up to the 100 mods per year for the individual members for the public. The limits which is applied for the every civilian facility and which causes use for the radioactive materials. Last and the next one, NRC's 100 mods per year dose limit which is related to the 1990 recommendations of the International Commissions on the Radiological Protections, which gives some safety backgrounds and their laws, what the type of the what the type of the factors which have to apply up to the limit, which have making some limits to applying of the radioactivity factor. The ICRP's scientists provide recommendation regarding radiations protecting or protections including dose limits. These dose limits are often implemented by governments worldwide as legally unenforceable regulations, which is unenforceable by the worldwide for unenforceable regulations. The ICRP recommended for 100 mods per year limit after concluding a lifetime of the exposure at this level would result in a very small health risk and roughly equivalent to background radiation in natural sources, which is how to be amount which is transmitted and what is going to be permanently damaged and how to be natural factor which is observed by in these points. Okay.